Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. If I can't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you I must die. Oh, yes, I must die. Oh, wait, the telephone. Hey.
Alejandro.
I'm taping, and I have with me a Pearl IPA in a glass jar. I mean, in a glass.
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of one of my mashes. I've got Lawson's Finest Liquids Sip of Sunshine IPA, which was put on my porch thanks to Marty Mapes. So a shout out to Marty for this very nice gift. But I am potentially committing a bit of sacrilege, because I'm diluting it with a Oscar Blues 1E IPA, and that's just to keep it from being, the Sip of Sunshine is 8%, the 1E IPA is 4%, so I'm just trying to keep it balanced,
And that's the kind of beer that that children used to have in Colorado, right? When you were a baby, they used to have 3.6% beer for children.
Well, yes, back in the day, Colorado was a place where, as I was growing up in college, it was they were near beers, and that was what was sold at all the stores so that 18-year-olds could drink them. And then, of course, Reagan came along, and he hijacked a bunch of federal funds and made it an imperative that it made it impossible. So that switched everything up. But we're anyway, right. But that was all pre-craft beer time. So that's like we don't want to talk about those times.
That's true. We don't want to discuss those times.
I
don't want to think about
times.
Watley's Red Barrel or the beers that were available to me as a child in England, because they weren't any fun either.
Yeah. I want to say I was hoping that we were going to discuss collectively, you and I would watch a movie that we both, we would both watch it. We would both talk about it. But I've been
we didn't.
No, we didn't do that, because I've been watching. It was the first time I have been attending the Sundance Film Festival for almost 30 years. And this is the very first time that I have not traveled to Utah to go to Park City to watch movies as part of the, industry screenings. And I've been watching them
in 30 years.
Yeah, it's the first time that I've basically, and I want to thank Sundance for making their selections available virtually. It's been a very interesting experience for me, because I kind of consider myself a little bit like the Seinfeld's soup Nazi when it comes to monitoring theater and being the guy who will throw people out who have their phones on or who are playing with laptops or anything like that. And here I am watching movies, Sundance titles, and I've been watching them on the can, in the shower, on the elliptical, mostly in bed. And it's a very surreal sort of experience. I'm just grateful that I'm able to see them, but at the same time, it's been very strange. And it's a very different way. And I would be surprised if they don't extend this out in some way, because it kind of has allowed everyone to come into Sundance who wants to. Normally tickets are like almost $30, but like I think for the virtual screenings, they've made them $15 for the general public. So almost half price, and then you can watch them from anywhere. So I would imagine that their attendance rate must have been pretty phenomenal, like much higher than usual.
How interesting. It'll be, and I wonder if the figures will be available so that you can
I'm going to guess the figures will not be available, but I think that the advantage is that it's going to allow a different way. I will tell you this, Alex, the last couple of years that I went to Sundance, I really felt like the industry screenings had gone to shit, because it's almost like the people who work in the industry are even worse than the general public when it comes to misbehaving while watching a movie, because they will say, well, I'm doing this for work, so I should be allowed to be on my phone, on my laptop while I'm watching a movie.
Yeah.
And I think that what this might do is it might open up a virtual hole where all the people who really just want to be multitasking and talking on the phone and writing notes at the same time while they're watching a movie, they can actually do that from, and here's the other thing. Most people spend $3,000 to $6,000, if not way more, just to travel to Sundance to watch these movies. And now that just got taken out of the equation entirely. It's so I think that if you have these business types who want to multitask, they should be able to just watch Sundance movies from LA or New York or wherever
it is. They don't
need
to go at all. Exactly. You're quite right. The industry people can all stay in LA. Right.
And those of us that actually want to see a movie on the big screen and not be distracted by other things, maybe we'll be free from those other business people. And that would be a great thing. So I'm all in favor.
Yeah. So what did you see of the films that you saw at Sundance since last we spoke? What did you like the best, and what did you feel you motivated to talk about?
I do want to give a big shout out. I mean, and it was one of my favorite films at Sundance. It's called A Glitch in the Matrix. It's the latest documentary by Rodney Asher. His two previous documentaries, Room 237 and The Matrix, are ones that I personally found to be very interesting, entertaining, and maybe just a little bit disturbing. Well, sometimes very disturbing. But I can say that I will say the same thing for A Glitch in the Matrix, his latest film, which just premiered at Sundance, and which as of Friday can be screened at internationalfilmseries.com for only $12. Yeah, and thanks to the distributor Magnolia, who will, they'll split the profits with us. But who would be interested in A Glitch in the Matrix? Well, anyone who has read a story by Philip K. Dick, or who has seen Blade Runner or Minority Report or Total Recall, or anyone who's interested in simulation theory. It was a really well put together, fascinating, and again, very entertaining documentary. The people who are interviewed, they use avatars, which makes for an interesting visual component. And much like Putin's palace, they have 3D renderings that are put together to give life to the memories and stories that are put forth by these avatars. So, it's absolutely fascinating. It's engaging. All I can say is I felt like we really hit the jackpot at the International Film Series by having booked this before it even premiered at Sundance, because
great.
When I say that it was one of my favorite movies, and then to know that we've got a chance to screen it and share it with fellow cinephiles, it's just that's just. I mean, I saw a lot of other great movies.
It's something of a coup.
Well, and a bit of a surprise coup, but yeah. But speaking of coups, and speaking of 3D renderings, I wanted to toss the ball your direction, because I think you still had some things to say about Putin's palace, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we was robbed, man. I was so entertained by Putin's palace, because it really did present this idea that the president of Russia was like this James Bond villain, who, when he wasn't like working to subvert our freedoms, he was like hanging out in his hookah lounge with the pole dancers, or in his private casino, and it was all, or in his private hockey rink. But it doesn't appear to be true at all. My sources, because obviously I'm not looking in the mainstream media to acquire any information about Russia, but my sources are a site called Irrationality, which is really worth checking out. It's a Canadian guy who's an academic who's also been in the military and diplomacy world, and he talks about Russian reality and the way it's perverted by the Western media. And that was an interesting piece about Navalny that he wrote. There's a site called Dances with Bears. I don't know if you got to go to check that one out, did you?
You sent me those links, and I did check them out, actually. Yeah.
And Dances with Bears is the one that looks like it was designed with, like, Netscape web wizard back in the days of Windows 98. You know, I mean, it's got that kind of a visual aesthetic in terms of a website. But if you can get past it, past the visual aesthetic, I want to give it a lot of praise because it's done by a guy called John Helmer, who is a long-serving, perhaps the longest-serving of all Russian correspondents. He speaks fluent Russian, and he points out a very interesting aspect of the documentary, which I'll return to in a minute. But the other site I wanted to shout out to, as well as Irrationality and Dances with Bears, is Moon of Alabama, which is often a very interesting site about Russia and about affairs in the Mideast and the Levant. So I think all three sites are well worth. You can just do an internet search for any of the terms I mentioned, and you will find those sites. It's not Twitter, it's not Facebook, it's none of that nonsense. It's not social media. It's just guys, independent journalists reporting on Russia. And so the take from reading these sites that I get is it's an unfinished luxury hotel. There is no no-fly zone, which is why our friend, the journalist, was able to fly his drone over it. There is no underground hockey rink. The interior is entirely unfinished. On one of the sites, there's a very sad picture of the bare concrete interior of the building. So there's no hookah bar, which is probably just as well because Putin doesn't smoke. So the question is, why are we looking at this, and why are we being told it's been watched by 100 million people, which also obviously doesn't include the bots? Navalny is, and this is per the Irrationality site, Navalny is a right-wing anti-Muslim activist who's been reinvented by the CIA as a neoliberal icon. We're supposed to get behind Navalny. And what he does during the documentary essentially is he reads a script that's been prepared for him off a teleprompter. And Helmer, on the Dances with Bears site, deduces, because he speaks fluent Russian, that the original script that Navalny is reading from was in English and was translated into Russian for him. And one of the bases that he has for this assertion or claim or opinion is the weird moment when Navalny, do you remember when he's talking about all the rooms in the mansion based on the floor plan, and he says, this is the room where they put their mud?
Yes, I do remember that.
And did that strike you as a little bit weird?
Well, I thought that he was making a reference to how pigs like to slop in mud, and he was basically just, because he does other little tangential, conjectures that are meant to make Putin look in a certain way.
Yeah, and there's these kind of illustrations that they create of Putin and his friends enjoying the casino and et cetera. But what Helmer says is that, based on the mud line and a few other things, is that the script that Navalny is reading was originally written in English and translated into Russian. And what Navalny is saying is he's reading word for word the Russian translation that they've come up with, because the Americans who wrote the script, the original script, had written mudroom.
Okay.
And there is no Russian equivalent of mudroom.
Oh.
So
okay.
I don't know if that's true or not speaking Russian, but that is one of the linguistic quirks of the documentary, which John Helmer says indicate that it was rather crudely translated from the English, and that Navalny is obviously he's a very dedicated autoprompter reader, but he doesn't correct the stuff as he reads it. Maybe right, maybe wrong. I don't know. I get two essential takeaways from this thing. One is, why does the CIA always pick assholes like Navalny and Guaido and Somoza and the Shah of Iran to support? Why don't they ever pick a good guy or a good woman to support? Because these people that they pick, like Navalny is polling at like about 3%. The biggest opposition in Russia, if you want to oppose Putin, if they want to get behind the biggest possible opposition to Putin, the guys who are polling about 30% as opposed to Putin's 55-60% in opinion polls is the Communist Party. They should get behind the Communist Party because Navalny is sharing the bottom 10% of the vote when votes ever happen, which obviously isn't anything that we can rely on. So my first question is, why are the CIA's choices for presidents always born to lose? And my second is, where is the mainstream media in all of this? Why do we have to rely on obscure websites and Randy Newman songs to form an opinion about Russian politics?
Well, good questions, Alex. You always give me a lot to ponder on, and I don't have any answers to the questions that you have right now. I just don't.
It's almost as if we had to look to Bob Dylan for a sensible take on the Kennedy assassination.
In terms, are you talking about his latest song that he did that was
Murder Most Foul?
Yeah, and please, do you want to bring out the details for the Bob Dylan song?
Oh, I just think anybody who's interested should check out Murder Most Foul because it's quite an interesting song. It's terribly political. Dylan's been interviewed twice now by the Washington Post and by the New York Times to talk about the song. Yeah. And the only thing they don't talk about is the content of the song. So they talk about like his, the clothes he's wearing today and how he feels at his age and how he's going to re-roof the house and stuff like that. But they never kind of get around to talking about the content of the song. So if anyone's interested, Murder Most Foul is a kind of, is like Randy Newman's Putin song, is an attempt to get at some kind of reality that the mainstream media skirt around. Which is interesting, but kind of depressing too.
Well, I mean, and that does somehow relate to A Glitch in the Matrix, which is a documentary about how perhaps the reality that we all feel we perceive is not even real. And I don't want to give more up because I think that the pleasures and the things that are of interest to be found in the documentary are best seen by watching it. And as of Friday, you'll be able to go to internationalfilmseries.com and watch it yourselves.
I'll watch it. It sounds very interesting. You've sold me on it.
Well, why don't maybe have a rejoinder on it? Because I know that I remember the photographs that you took of yourself by Philip K. Dick's grave, right? So
yes, Todd and I went to visit Philip K. Dick's grave out there on the flat plain.
I would love to discuss A Glitch in the Matrix with you next week, and let's do that. And anyone listening who wants to check it out can watch it and then be part of the conversation in a way. At least know what we're talking about when we do discuss it, because that would be great. I do feel there's more to be said about A Glitch in the Matrix, and in the meantime, I look forward to thinking about some of the things you just told me about regarding Putin's palace, because I haven't given it that much thought. I saw it and I did have a few questions, and you have reordered some of the position points that I might have on it. So, but I need to think about it because it is. I think it's very worth just checking out, some independent websites about anything that you're interested in. And I think certainly Irrationality, Dances with Bears, Moon of Alabama, they're all very sensible. And there are people who know about their stuff. They're not just, reading the New York Times and getting in a rage. They actually know their subject. I get that. But I mean, I'm no fan of Putin. So, but at the same time, I do want to have an open mind as to what is coming at me.
He can't do it. Sure he can. He can't do it. Yes, he can. He's going to take him to the promised land. because he's the Putin man.
Well, all right. Alex, always such a treat to have these conversations.
It certainly is. Thank you very much for having me again. It's lovely to talk to you.
Always.
And thank you very much to Jason for making sense of our
Absolutely
unintelligible chatting.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and thanks to all listening. And we'll talk again next week.
All right.
All right.
Ciao.
Ciao.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations.